Hello, crew. That's right. It's time for Retro Truckers. And where's my intro? Here it is.
Retro Truckers. Get down with the retro. Retro Truckers. Captain John and Commander Joe. Retro Truckers. We love our Star Trek. Retro Truckers. The nerd muscles get to flex. Retro Truckers. Get down with the retro. Retro.
Hey, friends.
Let's get it done. Retro.
So good to have you with us. That's me, Captain John. Brand new social media handle for me. So you can find me on X, Twitter. Come on, I call it Twitter. You can find me at Hello John Weber. You can also find me at SB80. But Instagram, we're really trying to make our way on Instagram. And when I say we, I mean me. Instagram hates me, but I'm trying to find my way of getting through. And I think we can even stream this show on Instagram if I play my cards right. So use this to find me on Instagram. You can use this to find me on X or Twitter. You know who is really worth finding? My co-host, the delightful Joe Townsell. Commander Townsell, welcome aboard the bridge.
Well, thank you, Captain John. You know, I have to confess something.
Yes.
But I don't care.
Yes.
Even though I'm not on camera when you play our opening theme, I still can't help but dance along, and just gets me in the right frame of mind for some retro trekkers. And I guess it's actually a good thing people can't see me for the most part, because they would just be laughing their butts off right now.
Retro trekkers, that groovy, funky tune based on an idea by Mr. Joe Townsell.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you give me too much credit, sir, but I'll take it as always.
Take it. We have got a great show for you today. We are going to talk about the third chapter of the Tribble-gy.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at the Tribbles of Star Trek, it's a great way to do a bunch of things. It was a great way to look at different kinds of Star Trek, the original series where the Tribbles debuted, the animated series where the Tribbles had their second, I don't know if adventure is the word I would use, incident maybe, and DS9, Deep Space Nine, doing the episode that we'll look at today, Trials and Tribble-ations. And I could easily say, no matter what, this is always in my top 5 Star Trek, no matter what. This one episode, I love it so much. Does it make your top 5, Mr. Townsell, or maybe your top 10?
Oh, I would put it in the top 5. Absolutely. I mean,
wow.
Actually, John, you made a more bold statement last week, I think, when you said it was your all-time favorite episode. But the top 5 is still pretty darn good. And that, considering there's been, my goodness, what, almost 1,000 episodes of Star Trek over the decades. But yeah, absolutely. Because as you say, it encapsulates so much of the lore and does in such a fun, entertaining way. It definitely gives us Tribbles in a misadventure. We'll use that word.
That's a nice
that
word. You're right.
Far outshines last week's look at the Trouble with Edward.
Oh boy, short treks. Oh, stinkeroo. Our good friend Raphael is with us. Raphael, welcome aboard, Ensign.
Ooh.
Indeed, Townselicious. We've got that going on today. Next week on Retro Trekkers. Sorry, next week we are going deep into the what? With an episode suggested by Mr. Townsell. Great episode, because I got to tell you, I forgot all about this one. This one went into the mind hole. I have no relationship to this episode at all. So what a great suggestion from Joe Townsell. Symbiosis from the Next Generation. We'll be talking about symbiosis next week. And I cannot describe to you how thrilled I am at having my head put on Wesley Crusher's body.
I knew you would be, John. That's why we had to go there. And, you know, you said this is a kind of a forgotten episode. Let's face it, season 1 generally is largely forgotten. I mean, most people would be hard pressed to say that's a classic. I mean, there's definitely no trials and tribulations in this first batch of 26.
The
And
first, yeah,
yeah,
the first.
so
No, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I'm just going to say that this is definitely something that it brings us to next generation, which we haven't touched on yet,
Yeah,
and in a way that it was, we'll be talking more detail, of course, as far as tidbits and so forth next week. But my goodness, what an example of so near and not so close at all.
what's really funny though, I love this from our friend Diana J. Brody. Wesley Crusher was the best. Not enough people appreciate Wesley Crusher. So I say in all seriousness, I actually was thrilled to be in his tunic for this. The first 2 years of Next Generation, I think I've told this story before. All of my friends, because I was doing comedy, so I wasn't home a lot, and I wasn't VCRing. I could have been, but I wasn't videotaping. And my friends over and over would go, "Yeah, don't bother. No, don't watch this show. Don't bother." And then I did start watching it deep in the second season, and I actually enjoyed it. I actually was getting into it. And then, of course, the third season, most of us fans are like, "Holy cow, this show's good. I'm really glad this show's on the air."
Well, unlike you, John, I mean, delving into TNG for just a moment before we get to more Tribbles, but my roommate at the time and we had both our VCRs hooked up to my TV in the living room, and we recorded every single one of them, pausing to omit commercials the best we could. And I had those crappy VHS tapes for years until they finally started putting them on video for me to buy properly.
Right. Tomorrow, Joe is on the road tomorrow. He's going to a gig. I'm making you sound really important, Joe.
Oh, wow. Where am I going?
Joe's got a gig. He will be a keynote speaker in the audience at the Let's Go Bowling show featuring our good friend Tony Luna. And so Joe and I have already recorded our part of the watch party. I will be hosting it live tomorrow and putting your comments up on the screen.
Yes.
And we'll be having just a great time, because honestly, Joe, I know you had seen Gargoyles before, but was that not so much fun? I enjoyed that so much.
Lest anyone thinks that we force ourselves to watch certain movies and TV shows for the good of the show. We do, but as far as forcing ourselves, no way. This is the type of thing we would sit down and just for the heck of it, lounge around on a lazy afternoon and watch Gargoyles, and it did not disappoint after all these years.
Not at all. What a lot of fun. So be sure to join us tomorrow, Retro Rangers. I will be there live. We will be rolling tape. We're going to have a lot of fun. It's a great movie, and Joe and I really did some good cutting up on it. Raphael asks, did we run footage of Gargoyles? We watched the whole thing. It's not public domain, but no one was fighting us on it. We were able to watch the whole thing. It was really great.
No, Raphael, please tune in tomorrow, because John will be there with you, commenting along with you live. As he says, putting your comments on screen like we always do. And you know what? If nothing else, you'll be able to watch the whole movie beginning to end along with us. And yes, special guest Garth the Gargoyle, although he's really a grotesque. Thank you, Diana. Will be there as well.
Garth contributed a lot of good stuff, so I'm very well. Here's the thing, and I want you guys to know this. This isn't like some secret or anything. What we found is copyright issues are really rough on us when we do Retro Rangers. But if it's a made-for-TV movie, it's almost always not being paid attention to. There aren't really algorithms for those. So if you want to ever see a made-for-TV movie, you let us know, because we might be able to get away with it. I don't know if like Roots would matter, would count. on that. Like, it doesn't matter, because roots does matter. So that one might be tough, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
But you know what? I mean, sometimes stuff that we're really worried about is just fine. Other times, stuff we wouldn't think would just be totally under the radar, just boom. So
crazy how that works out. And I'm just going to throw one more plug out there. If you're listening to or watching Mr. Weber's Webo Mystery this Thursday night, we will be doing one of the greatest horror episodes ever made for all old time radio, and that is from the series Suspense, The House in Cypress Canyon. It reminds me so much of the modern storytelling from just like 15 years ago in horror movies. This had been done in 1949. 46. This had been done in 1946. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're getting suggestions already. The Boy Who Drank Too Much, starring Scott Baio, says DJB, and Trilogy of Terror. Oh,
Raphael. Guess what?
We're going to have to guide you to a previous episode of ours, because in our Karen Black episode, we did Trilogy of Terror. So
it was the Karen Black double feature, and we did that as well as Burnt Offering. So Raphael, go look in season 1 of Rangers and locate. And if you need help, one of us will send you a direct link.
Absolutely. I can tell you that if you go to YouTube and you look up Weber Internet Thingy, you're going to find I have finally organized that front page, and you're going to be able to find our different shows. And yes. Ralph says, I will check the archives. Brody says, oh man, I want to see that too. Yeah, look, this was always a good show. We're just kind of getting around to showing it to people. That's what I'm all about. I do good work. It's just I don't tell anyone.
Well, we got to start. I'm going to tell somebody that right now, because unfortunately, last Thursday, when you had the cat lady,
yes,
on Webo Mystery, I couldn't watch it live, unfortunately, but I was doing some work later that evening, and I had it on, and just a lot of fun listening. And every once in a while I'd look over to get the comments, for what I was doing. And so believe me, guys, you definitely want to tune in every Thursday, 7 p.m. PST, 10 p.m. EST. Check out Webo Mystery.
I'll tell you what, Diana J. Brody has helped both me and Joe so much. What a great friend of the show she is. And all right, yes, I the ongoing YouTube tutorial series from DJB is going to help us all out in the long run. Let's get started on this.
Let's kill the suspense already. We're 13 minutes in. We haven't talked about Tribbles yet, pretty much.
Okay, so let's talk about the genesis of this episode. Brand new
category.
Brand new segment. Hey, man, you suggested the name.
Well, it seemed like a natural to me. But this is all John, folks.
Brody says, let the Tribbles rain down. And Ralph says, dance break. Yes, so let's talk about this episode. This is Trials and Tribble-ations. It is the 6th episode. I have notes, working off notes. The 6th episode of the 5th season of Deep Space Nine. Now, this year, 1996, of course, was the 30th anniversary of Star Trek. And the Paramount, the studio and the owner of Star Trek, was telling the executive producers of Deep Space Nine, hey, we would really love it if you guys could do something special about how Star Trek TOS, the original series, debuted 30 years ago. If you could reference that, we would love that. Now, also big at this time was the movie Forrest Gump. Mm-hmm. And it was using technology that allowed them to put the character Forrest Gump into historical footage almost seamlessly. It was a special effect that was really good at this point. And using that technology, Star Trek Deep Space Nine was able to do a crossover with Star Trek, the original series. Now, the question was to the guys writing the episode, so that would be Ronald D. Moore. Ronald D. Moore, one of my favorite producers in all of science fiction.
Battlestar, of course.
Absolutely love him. I love this from Brody. Finally, a reason to like the movie Forrest Gump. Yeah.
Diana, I'm disappointed.
No, I was never a fan either, to tell you the truth.
That's one of my favorites.
Everybody in it, I like everybody, but that one movie was just, I don't know, I didn't love it. But Ronald D. Moore and Renee Echevarria, they were trying to hammer out how they were going to do this. They worked with a lot of the other writers, and the first idea was to do a sequel to the story of Charlie X, because the actor who played Charlie, is that Nicholas Hammond?
In the original episode, that would be Robert Walker.
Robert Walker. Ooh. Well, he was gettable. They actually knew that he was out there still acting, so they were thinking about that. But it was kind of a depressing episode and not a lot of fun. So they weren't sure about that one. A lot of people liked the episode "A Piece of the Action."
Getting closer.
The planet where they they fell in love with gangster movies, so they turned the whole planet into one big gangster gang war. And then at the end of it, Dr. McCoy leaves his tricorder, I believe.
Yes.
And so now they're like, oh no. Basically, we just left them. They broke the Prime Directive, and they left them all of this technology, which was going to jump them ahead, especially this planet where they were super fast at adapting and super good at adapting.
Well, the Iosians were completely imitative, and yes, they were looking to do a sequel to A Piece of the Action, clear back to TNG at this point. So yeah, that was definitely a contender for this special 30th anniversary episode of DS9.
Well, you know what the story pitch was? The story pitch was they were going to go back to the planet, and everything on the planet was obsessed with Kirk and Spock. And they were going to use it to make fun of Star Trek fans. That it would be like going to a Star Trek convention to go to this planet. But they realized there wasn't really a big story there, so they backed out of that. And then while they were kind of bandying about episodes, a great thing happened, and I'll save that for tidbits. Because it's time for us to get to the beats.
Love the beats.
Oh, every week here on Retro Trekkers, we have our beats provided to us by the one and only Joe Townsville. And so let's get our beats.
Retro Trekkers. Tribble-gy, Part 3 of 3. Trials and Tribble-ations.
I love how you...
The time cops from temporal investigations darken the doorways of DS9. Time to interrogate Sisko regarding his trip to TOS. After a number of time puns, it's, well, time to get down to some funny Tribble business. Sisko explains that 2 weeks prior, he and the Defiant crew were headed to Cardassia to fetch the Bajorn Orb of Time. The orb is brought aboard, but so is an unwelcome passenger, one Barry Waddle. Seems this poor guy got caught behind enemy lines when the Klingons attacked Cardassia. Mr. Waddle is quite relieved that he can again enjoy some Roctagino instead of hot fish juice for his morning pick-me-up beverage. Everything is just dandy until a sudden surge in whatchamacallit radiation slams the Defiant. The little ship that could drops out of warp and decloaks. Before you can say, whose banners are coming on? The crafty Mr. Waddle transports off the ship to parts unknown. O'Brien, can't you curb that static on the view screen? Well, you got it, Captain. But, holy garbage scow, Batman! It's the TOS Enterprise! End of teaser, and what a teaser it is! Welcome to the 23rd century, gang. Turns out that Waddle is actually Arn Darvin, who fell upon hard times after being exposed as a Klingon.
No, my bad. Sorry.
Boy,
Just I was getting
original
into it.
trouble with Tribbles. Darvin has used the Orb of Time to get a second chance rubbing out James T. Kirk before the smirking Captain can expose Darvin's younger self. Holy old Biff Tannen Batman. Well, the Defiant crew's mission just took a hard left turn. Time to get decked out in some 1960s garb, go undercover, and beam on over to the Enterprise and the K7 station to find Garvin. Back in the 23rd century, command wore gold, operations wore red, and women wore less. Thank God for the latter, which allows us to see a leggy Dax in a miniskirt. O'Brien and Bashir fumble through the archaic technology of the TOS Enterprise. How do you get this turbo lift to move anyway? Computer! Hello, computer! Well, Cutie Pie Lieutenant Wadley takes the handle, states her destination, and the lift is in motion. The red-faced DS9 duo grab their own levers while ogling the comely Lieutenant Watley.
Hello.
Meanwhile, Odo hangs out in the K7 bar. Our favorite changeling learns that Darvin has been through recently and tried to order a Ractagino again. Darvin told the cute cocktail waitress, "I'll be back." So, Odo sits tight and waits for Darvin's return. But what's this? Uhura and Chekhov come into the bar. Deja vu. Cyrano Jones again gives her a cute little tribble. Worf arrives and sees with disdain and disgust that Odo has also acquired a tribble.
My favorite.
The little rodent squeals in protest. Worf turns up his nose. Those varmints do nothing but eat, reproduce, and destroy entire Klingon ecosystems. Odo is amused by the legend of the great Tribble hunt. Well, when it rains, it pours. A Klingon D7 battlecruiser enters orbit of the station. Dax is delighted. It's her old buddy Koloth's ship. Dax calms Sisko, explaining that Koloth once traded insults with Kirk, but it was nothing more than a pissing contest. No need for a red alert, Sisko. Not yet, anyway. So, back on the Enterprise, Bashir and O'Brien bump into doe-eyed Lieutenant Watley again, who clearly has the hots for the DS9 dock. Ever-horny Bashir suddenly speculates that the comely little lieutenant might just be his own great-grandmother.
Ooh.
Will he need to hook up with her to ensure his existence back in the 24th century?
Back to the future.
Ugh. I'm my own great-grandpa. Well, Miles tells Julian to calm down. The doc asks his buddy how he'd react if Bashir suddenly never existed. O'Brien can't help smiling at the prospect. Meanwhile, in a random corridor, Sisko rolls his eyes while fangirl Dax moons over Spock. She wonders if the urban legend about the size of a Vulcan's ears is true. And later in real life, Dax would marry Spock's son. Again, ugh. Back at the K7 bar, Bashir, O'Brien, Odo, and Worf gawk at Scotty, Chekhov, and William Shatner's stunt double. They also notice a group of Klingons who have no head bumps, but a buttload of swarthy makeup. Don't ask, Worf warns. We don't discuss it with outsiders. You'll just have to wait until the Star Trek Enterprise two-parter to get the full, albeit unnecessary, explanation. The Klingons pick a fight with the TOS Enterprise crew, and the DS9 crewmen get caught in the crossfire. Bashir hurts his hand punching a Klingon, TOS style. O'Brien dodges a flying chair. Worf belts an old-school Klingon, who doesn't seem to recognize Worf as a new-style Klingon. Must be that goofy hat Worf is wearing. It is as perfect a disguise as Spock always covering those dreamy Vulcan ears with a do-rag.
Nice hat.
After the bar brawl, Kirk chews out everyone. Who threw the first punch? I don't know, sir, O'Brien says, recalling the dialogue from the original episode. Well, Worf now has the older Darwin in custody. The genetically altered Klingon admits that the method of Kirk's assassination will be the epitome of poetic justice. Darwin has force-fed a bomb to a Tribble. The bomb will blow in an hour, somewhere near Kirk's location at that time. Better start scanning Tribbles, all 1 million plus of them. On the bridge, Dax fondly reminisces about Dr. McCoy fondling her when she had a previous female host.
She didn't say it
She
that way.
trills indeed. On the station, the DS9 crew is frantically scanning Tribbles, tossing each one carelessly aside to be accidentally scanned multiple times. But stop the presses! Hold the phone! In the Quadrotriptychale storage area, Dax has found the Bob-infused Tribble. Beam this critter into space, pronto! The fuzzball explodes at a safe distance, apparently undetected by everyone on the Enterprise, the Klingon ship, and the K-7 station.
Always wondered about that.
Older Darwin's plot to kill Kirk is thwarted. From inside the Grange storage bin, Sisko and Dax stifle giggles as Tribbles keep falling on Kirk's head below. All these Tribbles have died from gorging on grain poisoned by the younger Darwin. For more details, go rewatch Retro Trekkers Tribble-gy Part 1.
2 weeks ago.
So this is the end of the flashback. Well, almost. Sisko wraps up his Tribble tale to the time cops. History did unfold just as it was supposed to, and the precious timeline is intact. However, Sisko does admit that he fulfilled his own fanboy fantasy of telling Kirk that it was an honor to serve with him. Kirk asks his name and offers a smile that was originally given to a lovely yeoman, taken from TOS original footage from Mirror Mirror. Sisko invites the time cops to take their best shot for his transgression. But no problemo, says one of the temporal enforcers. He too would have risked polluting the timeline himself for the mere chance to pass the time of day with the great, legendary Captain Kirk. The time cops take their leave, completely ignoring one minor detail. What about the Tribbles anyway? Odo brought his Tribble back to the present, and now the station is infested with the little fuzzballs. Quark's bar and his head are literally crawling with the troublesome Tribbles. So the DS9 crew gets to work constructing Deep Space 10, a new station to serve as one huge kennel for these new 24th century bred Tribbles.
Ah, well done. Well done, Mr. Townsend. Well
Well,
done.
thank you, sir. I have to say that my favorite slide is, of course, the very last one. I think you make a fine looking Ferengi, sir.
You know, it's one of the aspirational things for me to be a heavily made up actor in Star Trek. Ferengi, I had no idea I could look so good as a Ferengi.
Now you do.
And I don't know if I've ever done my Quark imitation for you. Oh, please. Why is it always my fault?
That's
think I
excellent. See, now we got to get you in there now.
Well done. Well, now that we've gone through the beats. Oh, coming down and dirty. Let's talk about how you feel about this episode. So, what was it like going through it all over again, Mr. Townsend? Is it as good as you remember? Did you have fun?
Oh, yes to both questions, John. I mean, even more so. This is really a timeless classic in all of Trek lore. One of the very best over the decades, and it never gets old. I mean, it's such a treat. I mean, you really get the whole Trouble with Tribbles episode along with this one at the same time, so it's two for the price of one anyway.
Yeah,
and it's just a real delight. I'm so glad to end our Tribble-gy talking about this one today.
This to me has always been the best reason to do retro trekkers, is to bring back these recurring themes and these behind the scenes stories with the story that you watch on the tube. And again, I love this one. So I do really appreciate your point that you do get the right amount of the original episode in this episode, and that it also has so much crossover that it's got that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. There's a play by Tom Stoppard called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, which is about two characters not seen, only mentioned in Hamlet. And throughout the play, you're focused on Rosencrantz and Guildenstern while they're like walking past a doorway, and down the hall is the actual scene from Hamlet. So they're always like near Hamlet. They're always like walking past the characters, but they're living their own reality until they get pulled into the giant plot and are, sadly, I'm ruining it for you, they are killed.
What do our viewers think?
Well, Ralph asks a good question. Is this only the second comedic Star Trek episode?
Oh no, but not by a long shot, but absolutely one of the very best.
Yes. And in terms of being outwardly comedic, it is a really strong one. I'll definitely agree there that right from the very beginning, where you meet the Time Cops, and they are very reminiscent of Dragnet. They're very reminiscent of Friday and his partner, which I love. And they're
just the star dates, man.
Just the facts. And there is that great line about, and that's when we met Captain Kirk. Kirk, James Kirk, the man was a menace. He's like, they said he had 14 violations of time travel. And I think I tried to count it, and it's like, I can think of 7, but there were more. And those are only ones they know about. Oh, right. And then they're the ones they don't know about. Oh my God, that's so true. Okay, so let's jump ahead. I didn't really give this one a lot of thought. Do you feel, audience and Mr. Townsend, sorry, trying to get the volume knob. Do you feel that there were MVPs in this episode?
I think there's one I could name, and not only for the reasons you might guess, but I'm going to name Dax.
Oh,
now
yeah.
her obvious beauty and aside, which it's hard to put that aside, granted. But Dax in this episode basically represents all of Star Trek fandom. She is fulfilling the role of you and me if we had a chance to participate in this adventure ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
She is gaga over Spock and Kirk, and and everything else. I mean, Koloth, he was so wonderful then. It was in his prime. I lived in this. I mean, these are things that we'd be gushing at ourselves to given the opportunity. So I have to give it to Dax. I mean, it's a tough call because everyone plays such a great role, both DS9 and classic cast. But I have to give it to Dax for an MVP.
There is the actor who plays Arn Darvin is named Charlie Brill. Mm-hmm. And Charlie Brill is, a working actor, and he's done a few things in his day other than The Trouble with Tribbles. But it's really cool that he was back, and he is playing, when they first encounter him as the merchant who was trapped on Cardassia. And he's fooling everybody, and he does that thing you alluded to in the beats where he's saying, "Oh, Racticino, oh, you know what they have to drink at breakfast on Cardassia? Fish juice, hot fish juice." And he's such a nudge. He's such a funny kind of nothing character, which is a great distraction, a great misdirection from the fact that he is a villain. He was always a villain. And And he is like the big bad of this episode. He is going to change history. And what's his little thing he says to when he finally meets Worf, and they're talking Klingon to Klingon, and he's saying like, I think they'll put a statue of me in the middle of, I can't remember which square it is.
Oh, the Hall of Warriors.
Oh, I'm sorry, the Hall of Warriors. And it'll be a great statue. It's very Trumpian how he says it. It'll be a beautiful statue. In one hand, I'll have Kirk's head, and in the other hand, a Tribble. And he does a great job in this of being this villain, because he gets stopped really fast again, foiled again, just a schmo, unable to, carry out his mission. It's the other thing I really love. I guess that's not an MVP. Oh my God, who's that actor? Patty Duke's father.
William Shallert.
William Shallert. That's right. William Shallert again, yelling at Kirk, treating Kirk like garbage. It's very funny, the things that they bring back. But I have to say, I think the master stroke is in the original Trouble with Tribbles, when they open up the storage compartments and all the Tribbles fall on Kirk. And there's a giant pile of Tribbles, and he has Tribbles on his head. And they're talking, they're talking about, I'm sorry, the chat's very funny right now. They're talking about, what's going on, and random Tribbles keep falling. And originally they were just doing that for laughs. Like, dead Tribbles keep falling out of this thing. But actually they made that into a big part of this plot, where they're scanning each Tribble and throwing them. And that's why they keep hitting Kirk. It's just really well done. So honestly, I think my MVPs are Ira Stephen Bear, Renee Echevarria, and Ronald D. Moore for writing and conceiving this whole thing. And
Excellent
I do
choices.
also have to throw some love over to director Jonathan West. Jonathan West had done a lot of movies as well as TV episodes. And so he was the cinematographer they needed. He was the guy who could shoot it. And I don't know if I'm getting ahead on tidbits here, but I don't know if you've ever heard this, Joe, but he actually was using old cameras and old lenses to shoot the onboard the Enterprise scenes.
Yes, I was aware of that. And that is a little bit, something we'll touch on in tidbits. But yes, I mean, it also overlaps into Down and Dirty in the sense that it just created a nice mashup of the two styles from the 60s and the 90s.
Yeah, they're really, that's the perfect word. It was a mashup, and that's another thing that makes this episode so great. Something, we can talk about it, or we can do it. For the tidbits. Those tidbits. Mr. Townsend, what kind of tidbits do you have for the kids this week?
Well, I mean, there's so much to cover, really. I mean, we've touched on a lot of it already, because it's impossible sometimes to separate out all the different aspects of the episode. But like I said, as you mentioned, John, there was a long road going through old episodes, trying to figure out which one to capitalize on. They came with the perfect choice. Again, Charlie X to piece the action. Got landing on this one. Excellent choice of episodes. But again, there's always a creative process. This Trials and Tribble-ations, of course, was one of 2 episodes produced at the active franchise at the time. This one for DS9, and of course over on Voyager, within a week or 2 of this, there was the episode Flashback, which of course took our heroes, or at least Janeway and Tuvok, back to a Star Trek 6 era Excelsior with Sulu and Rand aboard, which interestingly, those 2 original series characters do not appear in the Tribbles. So there's no crossover of original series characters in either of these episodes, as luck would have it.
Very interesting.
Yes, because George Takei, of course, was largely absent for season 2 of TOS because he was over with the Duke filming the Green Berets. So a lot of
Oh.
his pre-written dialogue was given to Walter Koenig, who was new that year as Chekhov, as we know.
And it was a
Um,
pretty big Chekhov episode, honestly.
Oh yeah, I
He
mean,
did a lot.
it certainly turned into that, and I'm sure there was some modifications made to suit the character. We've talked the last couple weeks about how poor on David Gerald, who wrote the original as well as the animated sequel, just kept
Yeah.
trying to get himself in there in front of the camera somehow.
Right.
He finally managed to do it with this episode. If you in a blink or you'll miss it moment where there are Tribbles infesting the Enterprise corridors once again, and there is a crewman, unnamed, of course, no dialogue,
Yeah.
who reaches down, picks up one to pet, and that, of course, is David Gerald. So good for him. He finally made it onto the crew for one episode. And again, just getting back for a moment to the mythology of how it was made, the choreography we didn't really touch on too much.
Oh,
But
right.
the fight scene, most especially, that was TOS fighting, my friend. I mean, there was
Yeah.
no, that definitely harkened back. And again, referring back to the beats for a moment, there was what I thought at the time would have been the perfect moment where Worf says, "We don't discuss with outsiders," regarding the difference in the Klingons' appearance.
Right.
I remember thinking that at that time, almost 30 years ago. I said, "Perfect. Leave it at that."
Right.
The
I
reason they look
remember.
different is because they have better makeup now. Get over it already.
Right.
But of course, we had to have an in-universe explanation in Enterprise later. But that's a different episode of Trekkers. So
It's funny. I think it was Ronald D. Moore was saying that they had to bring in a fight coordinator from the old days
yes,
because nobody does that kind of barroom brawl anymore. And there was another pit that I picked up from Memory Alpha. I had no idea about this. So production designer Herman Zimmerman is very much the Star Trek expert.
yes,
He had not been working on DS9 during season 5 because he was over working on Star Trek First Contact.
right.
But he happened to finish early working on the movie, came by the studio, took a look at the sets, and said, this is great, except you guys are at 5/8 of the true scale. Like, what? And he was like, yeah, you're not 1-to-1 on true scale here. You guys are actually doing it smaller. And they brought him the plans that they had. And he was like, yeah, you're reading them wrong. And so they had to redo the corridors because originally the corridors were too small. But I also love that moment where people are walking up and down the corridors. And I can't remember. I think it's an exchange between Sisko and Dax when they say, wow, they really did crowd them in on the old ships.
Yeah, that was the comment Dax made to Sisko as they're trying to wrestle their way through the crowded corridor.
I love it. I just absolutely love it. Any other tidbits you can think of, sir?
I'll direct people. I think you can find footage on YouTube somewhere if you want to check it out, or it's on if you happen to have access to or own the DS9 DVDs or Blu-rays. Just some of the behind the scenes and how this episode was made is well worth checking out. They rebuilt a lot. They didn't rebuild everything though.
Mhm.
A lot of it was footage that was modified to fit. There's a great scene where Dax is in the episode where she gives Kirk a little look when he sits on a Tribble.
Right.
Of course, she's reacting to nothing, which is very common in TV and movies today because
Yeah.
it was all inserted later. But it just shows her. She walks down a total green screen all around her, walks down the green steps. Of course, this is inserted later as she's on the bridge. So again,
Yeah.
just kind of a check it out if you haven't already. Some of the behind the scenes about how they accomplish these wonderful Forrest Gump like effects, as we've called them.
There's also a shot of the space station K7, and for anyone who goes, that looks new, that doesn't look like
Mhm.
the traditional one. That is true. The original model had been lost a long time ago, so they had to make their own model for this one.
Well, and now that you mention that, John, I mean, the fact that they basically redid all the outer space sequences for this sequel episode, was largely inspiration for them to remaster the entire original series.
Mm-hmm.
To great results as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a great moment where Watley meets Bashir and Miles. And she says, "Your flap's open." And he looks down and she means the cover for his tricorder. And
Ooh.
the power will drain if the flap's open, apparently. So it's a
So-
thing. But of course, everyone hearing that thinks that his zipper's down.
I'm sure it's just an accident in the writing, John.
The chat, DJV says, "Oh my God, the Star Trek Spinal Tap Stonehenge moment, 5/8 scale." And then Raphael says, "Deep Space Nine episodes may be available on Pluto TV streaming app for free." They are. You are correct, my
That
friend.
is correct. Yes, they're
You can
there.
find them there. That's so sad because I mean, just a little peek into what Joe and I have been doing for years now is in doing Star Trek. Originally, when we started doing Star Trek shows, you could find Star Trek episodes on Netflix. You could find it on Amazon. You could find it here. You can find it there. As far as I know, they might have even been on YouTube. But Paramount at some point said, "Nope, we're pulling all of the stuff in. It's only on Paramount now," which is a shame because it's a great show. It should be more accessible. But hey, I get it.
Well, an argument for physical media, if I may, they're only available on Paramount, except in Joe Townsend's closet, 10 feet from him on Blu-ray.
do you have how many? I don't want people to rob you, but how many seasons and which series? What do you own? Because I don't own any Star Trek myself.
Oh, John, you're gonna make me go there, aren't you? I own every single episode of Star Trek ever made on Blu-ray.
That can include new Trek like Discovery or
No, I should qualify up through Enterprise.
Wow, and all the movies, I imagine. I don't think.
Oh yes, of course.
I don't think you'd go out in life raw dogging it without the movies. All right, my friends. Anything anybody else can think about Tribbles? Because we're gonna close the captain's log here soon.
If you think of something in the moment before we're done, pipe right up. But well, good. I'm glad Danny's impressed. That's a nice way of saying, what a nerd.
I mean, we have talked about this. Oh, Raphael, you should check it out sometime. It really isn't. This is damning with faint praise. It really isn't bad.
Well, that's the reputation it has, and you know what? I think by and large it doesn't live up to the best of TNG and DS9. But then again, that Voyager was a hit and miss, and I mean every series has its ups and downs, and definitely its qualifiers. So yes, right. Raphael, by all means, check it out, and stay tuned to Retro Trekkers because we will be looking at a very notable episode of Enterprise in the very near future.
We always make an effort to include Enterprise. It is a good show. It is a worthy show. And like a lot of Star Trek, the first couple of seasons were all right, but the third season was really good.
And third and fourth.
And the fourth. The fourth was even better.
Yes.
But the third season is pretty good. It's Brody says, fun fact, I've never seen a single Star Trek movie. Oh my gosh.
Well, Diana, what can I say to that? I mean, why are you depriving yourself, my friend? Come on.
Honestly, at this point in time, I can say they're all worth watching.
Oh,
yeah. If you caught me 25 years ago, I'd be like, don't watch this one. Don't watch the first one. Definitely watch Wrath of Khan. Don't watch this. But I don't gatekeep anymore. They're all good. I even love the not good ones. Star Trek V, The Undiscovered Country, right? No.
Star Trek V would be the final frontier, my friend. Star Trek VI is The Undiscovered Country.
You know what? I'm fighting above my weight right now, so I'm going to stop taking swings And Brody says, I missed the first few and then it just became a thing. I'd like to watch Khan and the one set in San Francisco. So good. The
Yes.
Voyage Home. Lots of good references in tonight's beats, by the way. Hello, computer.
Yes, you got that, did you, John?
You had so many tidbits inside the beats tonight. It was delicious. Mwah! Well cooked, my friend.
Oh, thank you, my friend. I mean, once you get rolling, it's hard to stop. And yes, I mean, Dinah makes a good point too, in the sense that for a long time, I mean, like John, I've come to just embrace everything as a whole. People have asked me over the years, what's your favorite series? And I said, to me, it's all just part of one big thing.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
on a smaller scale, people would say, they used to say, well, you watch the even numbered ones, 2, 4, and 6. There's a credence to that validity to that argument, but
there is.
But come on, they all have something to offer. But yes, Diana, of course, refers to Star Trek's 2 and 4, and
yes,
she needs to fill in the gaps, in my opinion.
yeah. I mean, honestly, even it's like the old thing they used to say about pizza. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good.
Still pretty good.
We hope you will be with us once again next week. That would be 8 p.m. on the East Coast and 5 p.m. on the Pacific Coast.
Yes.
And as we're roaring through October, this month is flying away. We will head into our new batch, because it won't be a Tribble-gy. We're going to do some bottle episodes, I believe they're called by the fans.
There you go.
We'll be doing some bottle episodes of Retro Trekkers. And of course, tomorrow, if you will join me, I would be delighted as I show you the watch party that Joe and I started for Gargoyles 1972. Mwah! So good. So good. Oh my gosh. Young Scott Glenn.
Yes.
Oh, folks. Young Jennifer Salt, if you know the show Soap at all. Oh, just fantastic.
John, I was going to compliment you on your restraint earlier and not mentioning the abundance of halter tops in Gargoyles. And not worn by the Gargoyles, but by Jennifer Salt.
Jennifer Salt gives us a halter top tutorial. and if you're into the XY chromosomes, Scott Glenn does most of the movie with an unbuttoned shirt with the pecs and the six pack showing underneath, and he is a young, fresh Scott Glenn too. So, Raphael says, took the day off to see the Star Trek films first showings in theaters all those years ago. Yeah. That was back in the day when I would see a movie really close to when it opened, as opposed to now when I'm like, I'll wait till it's streaming.
Damn kids make too much noise anyway.
I can't stand going to theaters. It's true. I'm telling you about myself. And this week,
yes,
Weber's Webo Mystery, the great horror radio show, The House in Cypress Canyon from the series Suspense. And want to remind you, Halloween night, the night of the 31st, we will be doing the War of the Worlds. I'll be playing that for you. That starts at 7 p.m. on the Pacific Coast and 10 p.m. if you are on the Best Coast. I'm sorry, the Beast Coast is what I like to call the East Coast. So yeah, 10 p.m. on the East Coast and 7 p.m. here where we're shooting from on the West Coast. And I think that might be it.
Well, you know what? The only thing I'll say in closing regarding Tribbles is that if you haven't had enough Tribbles the last 3 weeks, you can catch Tribble cameos, say that fast 3 times, in Star Trek 3, Diana. So if you haven't seen that, look for Tribbles toward the beginning.
Oh, my.
Briefly. We did see Tribbles once or twice in the most recent and final season of Discovery.
Right.
And they actually play a slightly questionable but prominent role at the end of Star Trek Into Darkness. We slip into the Kelvin universe in that one, which you don't normally want to cover, but just if you want your Tribble fix beyond this week, there are some more places to find them.
We are so glad you joined us this week and watching this episode. We hope you see the whole Tribble-gy, honestly, Retro Trekkers is a pretty new show. We have done previous shows, Joe and I. So if you want to go over, and I should probably get a graphic for this. But if you want to go over to the internet, the YouTube channel, that would be Weber Internet Thingy. Shame on me for not having a graphic for that. And I think that's it. Mr. Townsell, thank you once again for your service.
Oh, well, thank you, John, for yours. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight.
And folks, I'll see you tomorrow night, hopefully. And of course, that's late afternoon if you're on the West Coast. So that's 8 p.m. tomorrow and 5 p.m. Here on the Best Coast. And you get that off the screen and let it get this on the screen. Good night, Retro Trekkers.
Good night.